chorus. It's harder for you and it's harder for me to keep holding on to something I see not being worth my devotion and time. Difficult people lead beautiful lives. Yeah.
We were actually the first family to own this property since it was given by King's Grant that wasn't part of the original family. This was all part of a 6,000 acre piece of property, and then gradually, got broken down smaller and smaller pieces. And then when we bought it in 2004, like I said, we were the first group that was not part of the original family to have it handed down. The first year or two we were here, we had some backyard chickens, and what we ended up doing was we invited some folks up and we had just a cookout, and we cooked a couple of our chickens that we had raised. Several people that were there that day said, we've never had chicken that tasted like that. And so they said, would you raise a few for us for next year for our freezer? And so we thought, we're raising them for our family. We might as well raise a few for some other families too. And that's literally how we got into it. My biggest influence, especially early on, was an author from Ohio by the name of Gene Logsdon. A friend of mine gave me a book of his called The Contrary Farmer. That book was probably the book that caused me to really think about farming. His mantra was, instead of get big or get out, stay small and stay in. Most farmers want to do what they're doing better. A lot of them just don't know how necessarily. So I see regenerative as, again, the journey that you're talking about. And that journey really starts with the farmer understanding that they can do things a little bit better, whether it's for economics, whether it's for environmental, whether it's for their own land, whether it's for their community. And I feel like one of the biggest things that farmers have been missing for a long time, and that regenerative kind of automatically embeds in the equation, is thinking more about carbon and how carbon cycles through the system. That's really most larger conventional farmers that I've worked with over the last 20 years are not cycling carbon appropriately. If the carbon's not cycling properly, then the biology is suffering, the microbes are suffering. And if the microbes are suffering, or if they're not there, then the crop's gonna be suffering. Whether it's grass, whether it's grapes, whether it's corn. And the really cool thing about that is in the last 15 to 20 years, the science we've learned so much more about those systems than we knew before. That's what I think is really exciting about it. What I really like to see is a farmer that's engaged in trying to learn more about how their systems work. Because I'm gonna judge a farmer much more by the books on his shelf than the tools in his shed, if you know what I mean. Because that means that they're trying to be open-minded and trying to at least understand the system better. Because none of us are doing it 100% right. Like a lot of sort of rock star farmers these days say, if you're not failing, you're not farming. So you have to sort of put that into context with every operation. You can't walk onto a completely conventional farm who's never done anything other than that and expect them just to, pull the tablecloth off at one time and everything to be in place. My thing is, we're going through a paradigm shift right now. Farmers and agencies and institutions are really starting to see a little broader, I think, in terms of soil health, and particularly when it comes to economic resilience in the face of, crazy markets, whether it's direct market or whether it's wholesale or, whether it's export markets, they're all crazy and they all change. And that's the other thing that I feel like a lot of farmers are just now starting to understand. We've been telling them for years to diversify your crops and diversify your rotations and diversify your soil microbes. Why aren't we telling them to diversify their markets? And it's really easy for us as humans to get into that same routine, that's convenient. We know exactly how many widgets we're putting out. We know exactly how much it's gonna cost, and we know exactly how much we're gonna make on it. And it's kind of eye-opening when I talk with farmers, whether young farmers with no experience or even older farmers with plenty of experience, when they start realizing that, the more independent they can be and the more choices they can make for the benefit of their own ecological system, the more successful they're going to be, no matter what they're growing. Anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 chickens on farm every year. And when you process a chicken, you've got a lot of waste product, what the industry calls offal. Well, that's carbon. one of the endeavors that we've tried to do over the last 20 years is really understand how to cycle our carbon better. And when we process all those birds, we've got all this nitrogen component that needs to be composted. It's begging to be composted. So we utilize leaves or wood chips, and we compost all that material in what I call my compost castle. And I layer that in a sort of a lasagna style composting is what the permaculture folks call it. And a lot of people say, well, you can't compost meat products. The reason that the experts tell you not to do that is mainly because most people, especially if you're in town, they're not using enough carbon. Right. To truly compost, you really need a 10-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. At least that's what it should finish at. And the problem that a lot of people have when they compost, when those little backyard turners or their backyard compost piles, is they've got a lot of nitrogen materials but not enough high carbon materials. And so what happens then is it starts to stink. What I do is at the end of processing, we load up all the buckets of offal, put them on the tractor bucket. I drive it up here, so I'll start with a layer of chips there and we'll put everything on it, and then I'll put more chips on top and just kind of cap that off. And then December, January, usually I'll go in and take both of these gates off. I'll come in with the front end loader on the tractor and all this gets pulled out. And this is last year's. So you can see, as it starts to break down, you can still see there's some carbon tip. You can still see the chips, but for the most part, that's already starting to break down, into good stable compost. A lot of people say, well, why are you raising free range chickens, when you got all these hawks out there? If there's plenty of habitat and other stuff for them to eat, they're not going to eat my chickens. Same thing with coyotes. I mean, we've been raising chickens free range for 20 years, and I don't think we've ever had one loss to a coyote. And it's because they've got habitat. They have rabbits and squirrels and voles, and they've got other stuff to eat. We didn't come in and clear everything fence row to fence row, just to farm it all. We wanted the habitat. The wild habitat is part of our farm. When I do my grazing talk and I talk about the different aspects of the farm, that's one of the things I usually say is I think that made me a better grazer. It made me understand the system a little better because I didn't just have big square flat pastures. I had to work with contour. I had to work with different vegetation. I had to work with other animals. Originally when we got the cows, in my mind we got the cows because I was going to mow the grass in front of the chickens. Just like Joel in Joel's books and all these other, rock stars talk about doing. Well, again, if you've got nice big wide open pastures and you've got this train of chicken pens moving across the pasture and you've got this herd of cows moving in front of them, that model's great, but it didn't work here because we don't have that kind of access. It was just too much. I hear you. You gotta get back over there. Come on. So all the partitions and the walls in here are movable, so we can size it based on whatever we're getting.
So these are chickens that we raise in our pasture-based chicken models. So we raise them inside in the brooder until they're feathered enough to go out on grass, which is about 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the time of year and the breed of chicken. And then they're moved every day to a fresh patch of grass outside throughout the farm until they're processing age. Some chickens are processed closer to 8 weeks, while other heritage breeds that we process for meat are processed closer to 14 weeks. But at that point, they're processed here at the farm, and then customers come here to pick them up, or we distribute them to a couple of restaurants and other places that purchase from us.
We were talking about ways to expand the farm and thinking about new endeavors, ways to diversify the farm itself. So we kind of came upon an idea that if we can value add what we're already doing here and provide that additional, market stream for both our farm, but also for other farms, the natural thing then was we need a commercial kitchen. Basically, we started this because my wife's father several years ago had hip surgery.
When my dad was 72, he had his hip replaced, and this was about 10 years ago, with kind of chicken broth and stock was kind of becoming something that people did a little bit more in their home kitchen. And so I looked at the recipes that were going to be high in collagen and glucosamine and the things that someone who is having a joint replacement. I kind of started him about 2 weeks before his surgery, just having about a cup a day of broth. A lot of times he would just drink it out of a mug. Did that for a couple weeks before surgery and then continued for several weeks after his surgery. And throughout his recovery, when he would go back to the doctor and have everything looked at, they were really surprised at how quickly he was healing and said that they had never seen a 72-year-old man heal that quickly from that kind of incision. And so he, of course, contributes it to the chicken broth, and I do too. The chicken broth that I make comes from the bones of the chickens that we grow here at the farm. And when we process the chickens, we have feet left over, so we save the feet. And I peel those and add those to the broth. But then when I break down chickens into breasts and thighs and drumsticks and wings, I save the backbones, which are full of all kinds of good joint connections. So you throw those in the pot with some feet. I also like to do some anti-inflammatory herbs like fennel and cumin, coriander, ginger and turmeric, and I simmer all that stuff together. And I cook the broth for about 24 hours and then chill it and put it in containers, and it gels up really nice, which is a good reminder of all of the good gelatin and collagen that is in those bones that are now in the broth, and then you're going to consume that, and it really helps you with joint issues and skin issues and anti-inflammatory things.
Really what the whole idea of this came from was being able to use food as medicine, both in the broth form and the product form in the value adding, but also food as medicine socially, where we can have a place to gather, where people can come and they can prepare, they can value add their own products, then they can then in turn go and sell those, or just coming for the camaraderie and the networking. Like I said, on Sunday, we'll have a potluck here for our CSA, our membership, Edible Goose Creek, and members are all invited. We'll do a farm tour, we'll have music, we'll have a meal, and they'll be able to kind of check out the ones that haven't been here. They'll be able to see what this is, so that, hey, maybe next year they might want to come up and can tomatoes up here and use our facility for that. It was really kind of built with that in mind, not just for our farm, but to be able to offer it for other people to use. Acres USA is probably one of the best publications. They've been around for 50 plus years, and it's one of the best resources for farmers across the board. Even if you're hardcore conventional, or if you're certified organic, or anything in between, that publication and the publishing house that publishes their books, it's really just an incredible resource for all farmers and gardeners. We don't have all the answers, and that we're still learning so much about. We think we know, we think we've got agriculture and farming figured out, but we really don't. We're still learning so much about it. And Mother Nature knows how to do that much better than we do. So usually it's best for us to kind of stand aside and watch what the natural systems do and then try to mimic that as much as possible. And in my experience, the farmers that I've worked with over the last 20 years, the most successful ones are the ones that do that.